All right, so buckle up because today we're diving into something really unique. We've got this trip itinerary, a father planning a New York City adventure for his daughter's 17th birthday. And let me tell you, this isn't just your run-of-the-mill sightseeing tour. This is something special.
Yeah, you can really tell this dad put a lot of thought into this. What we have here is more like a carefully crafted journey with all these opportunities for them to connect and discover things together. It's really heartwarming, actually.
Totally. You can feel the love in the details. So, day one, they're starting their adventure in the Upper West Side, which I have to say is a pretty great choice if you ask me.
Oh, absolutely. It's got such a different vibe compared to like Times Square.
Yeah.
It's a little more laid back, more residential. You can actually breathe there.
Exactly. It's like easing into the city instead of getting hit by a wall of noise and chaos right off the bat. What do you think? Is that a deliberate move from the dad, like setting the tone for a more, I don't know, meaningful experience?
I think so, yeah. It's like he's saying, we're here to really experience New York, not just the tourist traps. And then they kick off their first day with the American Museum of Natural History, which,
Wow.
talk about kicking things off with a bang.
Okay, yes, the dinosaur exhibit is always a crowd pleaser. Who doesn't love dinosaurs? But I'm thinking there's more to it than that, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it. You've got the history of the entire planet under one roof. You go from exploring ancient civilizations to wandering through halls filled with artifacts from around the world.
And don't forget the planetarium. I mean, that's a whole other experience right there. You go from the vastness of space to the intricacies of, like, insect life all in one museum. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
It really is. And I think it sets the stage for the rest of the trip. It's like, get ready to be amazed because New York has a lot to offer.
Yeah.
And speaking of a lot to offer, day two takes them to the Met, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which, let's be honest, is overwhelming even for seasoned New Yorkers like us.
Oh, 100%. It's like trying to drink from a fire hose. There's just so much art spanning so many centuries, so many different cultures. Where do you even begin?
Right. And that's what I find so interesting about this itinerary. It doesn't try to do everything. Instead, it highlights this one very specific spot within the Met, the Temple of Dendor.
Oh, yeah, the Egyptian temple, right. It's kind of tucked away in its own little wing.
Exactly. And I think there's a reason for that. It's like this oasis of peace in the middle of this bustling museum, this ancient structure surrounded by, centuries of art.
I love that it's like a little reminder to pause and take it all in, which, let's be real, is something we all need to do more often, especially in a city that never sleeps.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Okay, now day three, they're ditching the museums and heading outdoors. Central Park, of course, because you can't go to New York and not experience Central Park, right?
It's practically a law, isn't it? But again, there's this intentionality here. They're not just strolling through, they're putting on their sneakers and going for a run.
Which is actually kind of genius when you think about it. Because, like, think about the conversations that happen naturally when you're side by side, just jogging along.
Or even just the moments of quiet reflection, you know? You're surrounded by nature, even if you're in the middle of Manhattan.
Absolutely. And let's not forget, they've got the Conservatory Garden on their list, which, if you haven't been, is like stepping into another world.
It's magical, completely different from the rest of the park.
Yeah.
And that juxtaposition, right, you've got the wildness of the park and then this perfectly manicured garden. I think that says a lot about how this trip is structured.
It's like he's curating experiences, not just checking off landmarks. Okay, get ready for day four, because this one screams classic New York City, the hop-on, hop-off bus tour.
Okay, now I know what you're thinking. Tourist trap.
It can be, but it can also be a really fun way to see the city, especially if you're strategic about it.
Exactly. You hit the highlights, hop off at the spots you really want to explore, and then grand finale of day four, they're ending with a sunset view from the Empire State Building.
Come on, that's iconic for a reason. You're seeing the entire city bathed in this golden light, and it's the perfect way to reflect on the day, on everything they've already experienced. And just when you think you've got this itinerary figured out, day five takes them someplace completely different. We're talking about the Intrepid Sea Air and Space Museum.
Okay, I have to admit, when I first saw this on the list, I was like, really? A museum about boats and planes. But then I remember, this isn't just any museum, it's on an actual aircraft carrier.
Yeah, and they've got a space shuttle there.
Yeah.
I mean, how cool is that? It's one thing to read about history in a textbook, but to actually stand on the deck of a warship, to see these incredible machines up close and personal, I imagine that has to be pretty impactful, especially for a teenager.
It's like stepping right into a history book
Ugh,
or
yeah,
a movie set.
totally. And speaking of stories, day six brings them to Broadway. Although, this is where it gets interesting.
How so? What's so special about a Broadway show? People go to Broadway shows all the time.
Yeah, but look at the itinerary. It doesn't actually say which show they're seeing. It just says, a night on Broadway.
Oh, I see what you mean. So it's like he's giving her the freedom to choose, to pick something she's really interested in.
Exactly. And that, to me, speaks volumes. It's like he's saying, this trip isn't just about me showing you my version of New York. It's about discovering what you love about this city, which I think is really special.
It's like a choose your own adventure, but for Broadway. I like that.
It's a nice touch. Okay, so they've done natural history. They've done classic art. Now get ready for day 7, because we're diving headfirst into the world of modern and contemporary art with a trip to MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art.
MoMA, always an experience. A little bit of everything there.
And that's what makes this stop so brilliant. You go from Van Gogh, those iconic sunflowers everyone knows, to Jackson Pollock, to Andy Warhol. It's like a crash course in how art has evolved over the past century.
It's definitely a lot to process, and I'm wondering, what kind of conversations do you think a dad and a 17-year-old daughter would have surrounded by all that, abstract and thought-provoking art?
I mean, the possibilities are endless, right? Are they talking about what they like and don't like? Are they debating whether something even qualifies as art? Are they trying to decipher the meaning behind a particular piece?
Or are they just like, okay, that's interesting, let's go get a pretzel?
Right, exactly. But I think that's kind of the beauty of it. It's all about sparking those conversations, getting them to think critically, even if they don't always agree.
I like to think he's secretly hoping she'll become a famous artist and credit him in her acceptance speech.
That would be amazing. Okay, are you ready for day 8? Because day 8 is chock full of quintessential New York City experiences.
Let's hear it.
We're talking about the Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island. We're going full-on tourist here.
And for good reason. I mean, those are iconic landmarks for a reason, right?
Oh, absolutely. And again, I think it's all about the way it's presented in the itinerary. Notice how they're not just, like, checking the Statue of Liberty off a list. It emphasizes the ferry ride, approaching Lady Liberty from the water, the anticipation building.
You kind of forget that part, but you're right. Seeing it from a distance like that, it hits differently.
And then you get to Ellis Island, which for a lot of people is an incredibly emotional experience. You're walking through the very halls where millions of immigrants took their first steps into a new life.
It's like stepping back in time, imagining the hopes and dreams they carried with them. And then after all of that, after you've had your fill of history and emotions, they're ending the day with a visit to Battery Park.
Which is so perfect because it's right there. You just walk off the ferry and boom, you're in this peaceful oasis with these incredible views of the harbor. It's the perfect place to decompress, to let everything you've just experienced sink in.
So they've had their history lesson, they've experienced the emotional weight of Ellis Island, and then day 9 rolls around and it's like, time to let loose a little.
Right, because day 9 is all about music.
Just music, that's all it says on the itinerary. Which, in a city like New York City, is basically an invitation to go explore,
I mean, where do you even begin? Are we talking jazz? Classical? A Broadway show? Maybe a little street performer action in Washington Square Park?
See, this is what I love about this dad's approach. It's like he has this whole beautifully planned itinerary, but he is also leaving space for those, those happy accidents, those moments you can't plan for.
The unscripted moments often become the best memories, don't they? And New York City is really good at providing those.
It's like the city itself is a co-conspirator in this whole meaningful 17th birthday trip thing.
I love that. Okay, but day 10, this is it, the grand finale. They're saying goodbye to the city that never sleeps.
And how are they doing it? Top of the Rock, which, I'm not going to lie, is my favorite observation deck in the entire city.
Really? Why, top of the rock over the Empire State Building? Fill me in.
Because you get to see the Empire State Building in the skyline. It's all about that view, that panorama of skyscrapers stretching out as far as the eye can see.
And after 10 days of exploring the city at street level, imagine seeing it from above, taking it all in.
I bet it's like seeing it with completely fresh eyes, even if you've lived here your whole life.
It makes you realize how much you haven't seen, how much there's still left to discover, even in a city you think you know.
Which I think is a perfect way to end a trip like this, don't you? It's like a little nudge from the city saying, come back and visit me again.
It really makes you think about travel differently, doesn't it? It's not just about checking off landmarks. It's about creating those moments, those shared experiences that stay with you long after you've unpacked your suitcase.
And sometimes the most meaningful souvenirs are the ones you can't hold in your hand. They're the memories, the conversations, the new perspectives you carry with you.
Beautifully said.
So, to our listeners out there, we want to hear from you. If you were to plan a trip like this, where every stop was an opportunity for connection and discovery, where would you go? What hidden gems are right in your own backyard? Let us know, because we're always up for a good adventure. Until next time, happy exploring.